It was a cold Friday morning. Mist still clung to the lawn outside the nursing home. I was standing in the courtyard, waiting to take a relative to the hospital, when I noticed her. A silver-haired woman, her bun neatly tied at the nape of her neck, gently tucking a wool scarf around a frail man in a wheelchair. She said nothing, but her gaze, quiet, kind, felt like warm autumn sunlight on a frozen face. Her name was Helen. She was 56, a part-time caregiver at the home. She lived alone, no husband, no parents. Her only daughter had moved to the East Coast the year before. Each day, she arrived early. She brewed tea, read aloud to Mr. James, who often forgot his own name, and folded origami crayons with Miss Margaret, who had lost hers to time. And strangely, she always smiled, not a big, cheery smile, but a soft one, tucked behind crow's feet, like she carried something private, yet deeply peaceful. Once, I came early and heard her quietly humming in the stillness of the room. Today, a glance and a warm cup of tea are enough. I couldn't understand how someone surrounded by sickness, forgetfulness, and silence could live so gently. No bitterness, no complaints, no self-pity, just slow footsteps and a way of living that made me want to re-examine my own. And you know what? She, with the hands always wiping away someone else's tears, taught me the art of living with a luminous heart, even on the darkest days. I began to observe her more closely, not through conversation, but through silence and stillness. And slowly, I began to understand. Some people live very quietly, but inside them flows a deep, steady river of peace. Her story wasn't glamorous, but in the way she lifted a teacup for someone who had forgotten their name, or quietly replaced flowers on a small altar for a friend who passed last year, I learned this. Positivity doesn't mean believing everything will be okay. It means choosing to be kind to the world and to yourself, even when it's not okay. Have you ever met someone like that? If not, I invite you to stay, because I want to take you with me through the quiet mornings I shared with Helen and the life lessons I learned about mindful living. Since then, I began arriving earlier at the nursing home, not to visit anyone, just to observe Helen. It might sound odd, but if you had seen the way she watered a fading orchid so gently, as if it were still in full bloom, or how she peeled off old wallpaper in an empty room, as if wiping away a sad memory, not just a wall stain, you'd understand. One rainy morning, I sat in my car and watched through the window. She stood beneath the awning, mending an old coat. Inside, the patient slept, but she kept stitching, slowly, quietly. I asked, "Why do you do so much and still smile?" She didn't look up. "Because when you're fully present in what you do," she said, "even tiredness doesn't turn into bitterness." Mindfulness. I used to think it was something abstract. You had to sit in a temple, leave behind worldly affairs. But Helen taught me this. Mindfulness is placing your whole heart into whatever you're doing, even the smallest acts, like folding clean towels, neither rushed nor delayed, like making a hot cup of cocoa for an insomniac, stirring gently while humming, breathing in peace, breathing out smile. For her, every action was a prayer, every step down the hallway a return to herself. She once told me she went into a deep depression after her daughter moved away. Some days, she said nothing, just stared at a photo frame. She thought her life had become a shadow. But then one day, a friend invited her to a local temple. Sitting still among the soft chants, she wept. I realized I was still here, still breathing, and if I was still breathing, I still had a chance to live fully, one day at a time. From then on, she practiced mindful breathing. Each morning, before leaving home, she sat for 5 quiet minutes, not thinking, just listening to the wind through the window and whispering, "Even if today all I do is hand someone a cup of water, I'll do it with love." Hearing her speak made me pause. In a world where everyone rushes to do more, to be more, here was someone who found meaning in the smallest gestures. And I began asking myself, how many times have I brewed tea and truly been grateful for hot water? How many meals have I eaten without remembering they were born from rain, sun, and someone's sweat? That's what I learned from Helen, that mindfulness isn't in scripture, but in how you wash a dish. When you wash, just wash. When you listen, really listen. When you breathe, know you are alive. And when you know you are alive, even if life feels cold, a small corner of spring still blooms inside you. Helen lived like that, and I began practicing it too, from those quiet mornings by the nursing home window. If you're still with me, thank you for walking this far. Helen's journey isn't over. Next, I'll share how she nearly broke down during the flu outbreak, but found healing again through art, compassion, and crayons. I used to think Helen was unshakable. A woman like her, who would ever imagine she might come close to breaking? It happened last winter. The flu spread fast. The nursing home was short-staffed. 3 nurses quit. Several elders were coughing constantly, some burning with fever. Helen was still there, from early morning to late at night. Still wearing that soft beige scarf. Still smiling. But something was different. One day, I found her sitting motionless under the porch roof, arms wrapped around an elderly woman who had just passed that morning. Her face no longer carried its quiet smile, just a deep and exhausted sorrow. "Sometimes," she whispered, "compassion feels like a double-edged sword. When you love deeply, you also hurt deeply." I didn't know what to say. A few days later, she returned, but this time she was at a children's shelter in the north part of the city. "I needed to breathe," she told me. "I'd been with so much aging. I needed to remember the colors of childhood." It was there at that shelter where I saw the quiet power of positive thinking. Not the kind that paints everything rosy, but the kind that softly believes things can change if we change how we look at them. In a small classroom sat 7 children silent. No laughter, no questions. Each one had carried a heavy story. Loss, abandonment, or abuse. Helen didn't ask them anything. She simply placed a box of crayons and a stack of blank paper in front of them. "Draw me something," she said. "Anything that makes your heart feel lighter." Some scribbled the entire page black. One drew a tree without leaves. But they came back the next day, and again the next. A week later, a little girl gave Helen a drawing. A purple sky with a door swung wide open. "Miss Helen," she said. "I dreamed someone opened a door and let me outside." Helen didn't say anything. She just held the girl close, but I saw her eyes shimmer with tears. The compassion Helen gave wasn't just in her smile. It was in how she stayed present with others' pain without trying to run from it. One boy cried every night because of past beatings. Helen didn't hush him. She didn't distract him with toys. She simply sat beside him, placed a hand gently on his chest, and whispered, "I'm here now. It's okay. Let's breathe together." She taught the kids lotus breathing. Breathe in like you're smelling a lotus flower. Breathe out like you're blowing out a birthday candle. I used to think children wouldn't understand things like meditation, but I saw clearly they didn't need to understand. They just needed to feel safe in the presence of someone who was truly at peace. One afternoon, Helen told me, "People think positive thinking means being cheerful, but really, it's about being willing to sit with sadness without letting it drown you." I asked, "And how do you do that?" She replied simply, "When I sit with someone else's pain and don't turn away, minä soften stu." Positive thinking isn't covering life in pink. It's knowing beneath every dark layer, there's still a light waiting for us to see it. I never imagined I'd learn something so profound from a woman in her 60s who didn't preach or teach theories. She just lived, and from that life, lessons bloomed like flowers arriving in their own season. Because of Helen, I began to change the way I approached my own work. I stopped chasing perfection. I learned to sit quietly just to listen to myself. Every morning now, instead of checking my phone, I step into the yard, stand still in the sunlight, and whisper, "Today, I choose peace. Today, I choose to see what's good." And you know what? Each day does feel a little better, not because something magical happens, but because I choose to live with the light inside me. I'll never forget that crisp morning in April, when spring had just begun. Helen called me, her voice calm. "Next week, I'll be leaving the nursing home." I was stunned. After all those years, she had become its soul. Everyone assumed she'd be there forever. I asked why. She didn't say much, just sent me a note, handwritten in brown ink. Every journey needs a pause, and even kindness must sometimes transform before it turns into exhaustion. H. Her farewell had no flowers, no ceremony, just a regular morning like any other. She walked the hallways, held each elder's hand, smiled, spoke softly like always. But this time, she didn't return to the break room. I saw her walk out to the garden, light an incense stick beneath the white magnolia tree, that same spot where she once told me, "When I feel tired, I come here to breathe, not to escape, but to remind myself some things still bloom, even in silence." After she left, the nursing home felt strangely quiet, not because we were understaffed, but because something gentle was missing. Yet, I slowly realized Helen had never really left. Her book, Mindfulness in Every Breath, still sat on the shelf, pages marked with notes. A jar of wildflowers still stood in the activity room, her Tuesday ritual. And more importantly, in the way we began eating breakfast together in silence, in the way a young nurse bowed as she tucked an elder in for the night. I saw Helen's presence there, not in body, but in her way of being, her compassion, her quiet strength. Months later, I visited Helen at her little house on the edge of town. The lavender garden still danced gently in the wind. We sat together, without many words. She brought out a small wooden box. Inside were handwritten letters from children at the orphanage. "I didn't do anything big," she said. "I just sat with wounds that no one else dared to look at." Then she smiled, eyes far away. "But I've learned this. Miracles don't happen when we control life. They happen when we choose to trust the tiny light inside us, even when everything outside is dark." I asked her, "After all of this, are you afraid of growing old?" She placed her hand on a steaming cup of tea. "No, I'm not afraid of aging. I'm only afraid of living a life I wasn't truly present for." And she added, "Aging isn't waiting for death. It's the most beautiful time to slow down, live deeply, and make space for peace to live inside you." Dear friend, if you're feeling lost in life's noise, if you've ever woken up unsure of what today is for, pause. Do what Helen taught me to do. Sit quietly for 5 minutes each morning, not to achieve anything, just to notice that you're alive. Write down 3 little things you're grateful for, like sunlight on your coffee cup, birdsong outside your window, or simply the breath still moving through you. And if this story touched something in you, don't hesitate to share it with someone else. You never know. It might be the little bridge that brings someone back to themselves. If you want to walk alongside people like Helen, those choosing to live mindfully every day, hit subscribe. Together, we'll keep going through stories, lessons, and shared breaths as a quiet community for souls who cherish simplicity and truth. You don't have to wait for the storm to pass to start loving the sun again. You don't need a perfect life to begin living in peace. All you need is one breath truly present with yourself, and maybe that's the most powerful thing you'll do today. See you in the next video. We'll keep walking this path together, one honest, healing story at a time.